I'm really interested in talking to you today because I think you're a bit more varied, I guess.
Okay,
That's the word I want to use.
that's a nice way of putting it.
Yeah. So today we're going to be diving into the mind of one particular person who loves to let his geek gag. Oh no! Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Backstory. We are going to be diving into the mind of another comic enthusiastic YouTuber. We're going to be looking at breaking down the stereotype of what makes a comic book reader and a comic book itself. And we're going to be shedding light on the whole thing. And today we're going to be diving into the mind of the person who lets their geek flag fly. It is HydraCollectables. Here he is. Oh, where is he? There he is. How you doing, mate?
Hi, buddy. How you doing? Thanks for having me on.
Bad. Thank you for coming on. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. You know, we've only had one interaction before this, haven't we? And that was on Shane's Dawn of Comics quiz, which
Yep.
you won. Which you won. Well done.
Thank you.
Have you had your prize of him yet?
Yeah. So actually, the date that we're recording this, it actually came today, and
Cool.
I've made a video that is, well, when people are watching this, it's already been released on my channel, so people can check that out and see what I got inside the package.
Ooh, no spoilers. No spoilers. That's
Nope.
cool. You know, but were you happy with it?
Oh
Let's
yeah,
just say.
absolutely. I mean, he didn't have to give out prizes. You know, it
Oh,
was just
not
a
at
good
all. Yeah.
laugh. It was very kind
Yeah.
of him to do so. And yeah, I am very happy with it. You know, I'm a big fan of like when people do acts of kindness like that.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
AOKs as it were.
AOKs, yeah, it's awesome. I mean, I love it. But anyway, so your Hydra Collectables. So and your, as I was saying just before we started recording, that your channel is a very varied channel. It's not just comics. You do everything geeky, and I think that's really cool. So, like, you know, what kind of other stuff do you do? Like, what are you interested in?
Yeah, so it's pretty much everything. I mean, the whole point of the name Hydra was because the mythical beast of Greek mythology with the
Yeah.
multiple heads. And so, like, each head represents a different form of the hobby, a different part of the collection.
Right. Okay.
So there's obviously comic books, there's toys, there's movies. It goes on to cosplay, special effects, the whole lot. Like anything that is remotely geeky or nerdy in nature
Yeah.
falls under the Hydra umbrella.
That's really cool. I mean, so yeah, that's a really cool way then. So you got the name because of your interest. So it's basically like an umbrella of interest, pretty much. All these things
Yeah,
fall under the
because
one thing.
when you first come onto YouTube, everyone tells you that you've got to get a niche or a niche,
Yeah.
and
A
they
niche,
say that
yeah.
you've got to really like focus down on one thing. And my
Do
one
you?
thing is me. My one thing is the stuff that I like, you
Yes.
know. And I've always set out to meet like-minded people. So whether I meet people through movies or through comics or through toys, Hydra Collectibles is a place that we can all come together.
That's really cool. So you're like this kind of, oh, what am I trying to say? You're just this one place where everyone can come together and just, there's something for everyone. That's what you're,
Jack of all trades, master of none.
that's awesome. That's cool, man. But okay, so yeah, we are going to focus on obviously the comic side of things. We can get into the other stuff later on, which would be cool to learn about as well. But first of all, we're going to start off with the question of how did the love of comics start for you?
Wow, what a question.
Deep question? Too much?
Very big question. Well, for people that know me, you know, they've seen it on my channel. One of my very first videos was my origin story, and I've also revisited it later down the road.
Okay.
My origin into comics is quite a unique one because it didn't really start with comic books per se.
Okay.
So I've always been a fan of comic books. You know, I like the characters. You know, I'm a massive Spider-Man fan.
Right.
And so when I was a kid, I would go around like boot sales and things like that with my dad, and you know, I would pick up some random comics and some random books. But my love of comic books as a whole didn't come into play until one night at BlockBuster Video.
Right.
So
You
BlockBuster
had
Video.
my interest, and now I'm very intrigued.
So Blockbuster Video back in the 90s, around 94, 95, started doing a promotional giveaway. And they started giving away Flair Marvel cards. So these were like
Ooh,
trading cards that you could get. And basically when you hired out your movies, they would offer you a pack of cards.
that's a pack of cards. That's
That's a
not.
pack of cards that's got 10 cards inside it. This one's actually still sealed up, and that's
Wow.
Magneto on the cover.
Okay.
And so, yeah, you would get a pack of trading cards. These cards, which I am fortunate enough to have multiple copies of, basically
Wow.
depict all the different superheroes.
I'm just going to take myself off. Just talk about it.
So, yeah, these are the Flair 94 trading cards. And I personally really got into them because of the Marvel animated shows that were on at the time. You know, we had Spider-Man, we had X-Men, we had all of those different shows during that era. And that's why I went to Blockbuster Video. I went to go there to get more of these shows, like get the videos so I could watch them. And so when these cards came out, you know, they tell you all on the back here, you know, the various comic issues that they were all part of. And so, yeah, my love of comics just kind of spiraled from that, because once the promotion was over and we weren't getting any more of these cards, I had to find out where to buy them from. And so I went to my first comic shop, and I started purchasing these cards with the money that I would make from helping my dad at car boot sales and jumble sales.
Right. That's cool. Is that cool? So it's all started because of Blockbuster. That's I was not expecting that, to be honest. You know, the people I've spoken to have been like, oh, you know, it's my dad bought me my first comic, or I stumbled upon it and I liked this particular character, and it snowballed from there. But no, so you went to Blockbuster and you rented out series and you got these cards with them.
So I used to rent out series, and it just so happened that at the same time they were doing this promotional giveaway, and whether they were supposed to or not, I have no idea. But the guys behind the counter would just give me a load of these cards.
Have them.
And it got to the stage where I was literally like turning up after school on my bike, just opening the door and saying, "Can I have a pack of cards?" And they would lob them across the room.
What? Well, for free?
I'd shoot off with a bunch of cards, just completely free.
That's amazing. That's really cool. So what? So you must have had quite a few then, quite a lot of packs.
Yeah. So I actually completed the set 3 times.
What?
So once as a child. So obviously I collected them, and I got the base set of 150 cards.
Okay.
And then when I was a little bit older, I kind of like reminisced and wanted to get them again, and I couldn't find them anywhere. So
Nostalgia.
I bought a set online. And then, more recently, the same thing happened again. You know, I've moved house a few times, I've got married, everything else. Didn't think that I had them. Bought another set, and then sure enough, I found all of them. So now I've got 3 sets kicking around the house.
3 completed sets.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I hope you don't mind me asking, but is there a value on these kind of things?
Not really. It's more like nostalgia. Like the base sets are reasonably cheap. Like you could probably pick up a base set of certain years, because these cards they're released every year. So
they're still doing them now.
They still do them now. So back in 1992, they released the first set.
Okay.
94 is the one that I'm most nostalgic about. They're the ones that I love. That's the one that I have 3 sets of.
Okay.
I believe the hardest set to actually get was the Masterworks from 96.
Right. So, and why is that so hard?
Just because that was all during like the time of the comic book crash, and so like nobody was buying this stuff. Everything could kind of like fallen to the wayside, and there was just no way of getting them. So they're very rare and very hard to get. And so those price differences, like these 94 ones, are very easy to come by. However, like the 96 ones, like I say, are extremely rare.
They're just low prints.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. Like comic stores just weren't ordering them in. Nobody was buying them. They weren't making the sales. And with the industry crashing the way that it did, they just weren't about.
Wow. Yeah, that's so cool. Like, I don't know a lot about the card side of things, but that's really cool to learn about. So that one pack you haven't opened, why haven't you opened it?
So I've actually got a back here. I don't know if you can see it. Where am I? So that's a BlockBuster video shelf there.
Oh,
Um,
wow. Okay.
so I've created like each of my shelves in this room kind of like reminisce something from my hobby or
Oh,
my childhood. And
okay.
over there, I've actually got BlockBuster video, and I've had the clamshell VHS boxes made up to have all of the details about the MCU movies.
What?
So if I grabbed one of those videos, it would literally be like Iron Man 1, and it would tell you starring Robert Downey Jr. everything else, but it's a BlockBuster video case.
Oh, that's so cool. So you had to get them what, specially made, or did you make them yourself?
No, yeah. So there's a gentleman that I know from like the cosplay and effects kind of world.
Okay.
Paul Elder Designs. You can find him on Etsy and eBay and stuff like that. And he made me the template, and then my cousin basically just created them all for me. So I said to him, I was like, if I hand you the template, can you make them for me? And he was like, yeah,
Yeah.
I'll do it.
So you know a guy who knows a guy.
I know a guy who knows a guy. That's
Yeah.
kind of the story
Oh,
of my life.
that's so cool. So, so what was the first comic you got then? Like, so if the cards started your love for it all, and you went to the comic shop then to get those cards, and assuming you had a look around and seeing what else they had,
Yeah.
what?
So this is where it gets like ever so slightly jumbled because a lot of people would say in their origin stories, especially here in the UK, that they started with like Beano or Dandy and then moved on
Yeah,
to like Marvel or DC. For me, it was I used to go around the boot sales with my dad and I would pick up random comics and I would read them and that was it. Like I didn't really collect them or do anything. Then these cards came out and then I became a comic book collector.
right.
So there are two separate paths to that story, to that thing. The first comic that I ever remember purchasing, I still have to this day,
Ooh, come
um,
on. Let's see. Do you
and
have
that
any?
is my Amazing
What?
Spider-Man issue number 6, first appearance of the Lizard. So
Lizard.
this is my oldest comic book in the sense of it's the one that I've owned the longest, not necessarily the oldest book because I've got books from like the 40s and 50s.
Right. Okay. So
So
been in your possession for the
this is
longest time.
like me physically owning this book. And this book was in this condition when I first got it. Like this was covered in sellotape. It was all
Oh,
held together. I paid pennies for it, like next to nothing.
yeah.
Um, we're talking about the early 90s when I picked this up. And I've loved it so much over the years that I sent it off to CGC to be slabbed. I
Got
couldn't
it.
care less what the grade was. This is purely sentimental value.
Yeah.
And this is my first book that I ever purchased.
Wow. Wow. I did want to ask you the question, what is your more sentimental
It's
comic?
that one.
It is that one. That's
It is
cool.
that one.
That's
If
great to
I,
see.
out of all of my books, nothing in my collection is strictly permanent, except maybe that book. That book I will never get rid of because it means so much to me.
Yeah.
It's also my favorite character. So, but we can get into that.
Yeah. So Spider-Man is your favorite character, not the lizard, Spider-Man.
No, the lizard.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, totally twisted, blew my mind. So why the lizard then? What attracts you to that?
So my favorite fictional character of all time is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I love that idea of
Right.
a man becoming a monster through science or becoming a Superman. Not Mr. Hyde, although does evil things, he's effectively a Superman. He's stronger, he's faster, he's better. He's the next stage in human evolution. And my favorite characters in comics are based on that story. So whether it be the Lizard with Dr. Connors wanting to regrow his arm, whether or
Yeah.
not it be Bruce Banner with the Hulk, whether it be
gonna ask.
Norman Osborn with the Green Goblin, and even on some level like Venom, the fact that you've got a man and then the alien symbiote bonding together, it's that dual personality, it's that split
Okay.
down the middle. I just think that it makes for fantastic reading and great characters. My all-time fictional character is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, but
Right.
comic book wise,
Okay.
the Lizard is my favorite.
The lizard. So why not the Hulk then. So like, why are you going after? Like, I know, the human alter ego of the lizard. He's like a good guy, isn't he? And then the lizard side is that's the villain part.
Yeah.
But so why
So
have you gone for that and not like the Hulk, who is the good guy?
So again, it goes back to that. It goes back to that storytelling. It goes back to how this happened, how it occurred. The Incredible Hulk. It was an accident. He was just in that place at that time. The occurrence happened, and he became what he is. The same can kind of be said for the Green Goblin with like the Goblin serum and everything else. Like these were all they were more accidental. Whereas, like you said, like Dr. Connors was missing his arm. He was trying to do something for the greater good. He was trying to, benefit not just himself but others. He the one thing that he craved the most was to be able to like hold and hug his son. And so there's just more depth there. There's more emotion, and it is very much that it's so directly tied to Jekyll and Hyde with the fact of it being a scientist and everything else. So. And I like the villains. The villains are cool.
Yeah.
Hulk is great. Don't get me wrong. I absolutely love the current run of Immortal Hulk. But yeah, for me, there's something about the lizard. I just think he's so cool.
That is cool. Oh, nice, man. So okay, and then what introduced you to Jekyll and Hyde?
So the first time that I ever remember was literally just being at school, and I found the book because it's a very short story. It's The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde and Other Stories. It's a very small book, and I had to do a book review, and it was all very last minute. So I picked a short story.
Like for school or something, was it? Or
yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So it was purely me trying to be cheeky and get out of doing work by picking something small, and yet it kind of became one of my all-time favorite stories that I've ever read.
And look at you now with all this stuff behind you,
all because of that.
Would you say everything, like your YouTube channel and all the stuff you're into, this you got behind you, would you say that's all down to that cheekiness of you trying to kind of like
I would say
maybe not half-ass something, but you know what I mean? You're trying to like.
So I think a lot of it was just. I mean, I'm not a believer in fate or anything, but there is a lot of connections. So the first book that I ever picked up, or first book that I remember picking up, happened to be the first appearance of the lizard. Then all of a sudden it came to the 1994 Spider-Man cartoon, and the very first episode is Night of the Lizard. Do you know what I mean?
What?
And then fast forward a few years later, and then I read the book Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and make that connection. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I saw the Spider-Man book first, and then read Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Okay.
As opposed to the other way around.
Yeah. So it was just like a series of coincidental events.
Yeah, kind of.
That's so cool. That is really cool. Yeah. That's great how we've gone from going to BlockBuster to pick up some animated shows or get any cards to well, you got the comic before that, didn't you?
So I got the comic first. So again, it goes back to like I picked up the comic, read it, didn't really think much of it, just kind of kept it in the house, didn't really. And then I would get a couple more comics as time went on. But obviously back then you could just read one comic. You didn't have to depend on like a big story arc.
Yeah.
It was kind of like a one and done kind of feel. So you could read comics that way back then. And I didn't know what I was doing. I'd just pick up any old Spider-Man book. So I kind of went from finding this like original, like rarer book at a car boot sale to then like reading stuff actually from the 90s. So like I would jump from reading the first appearance of the lizard to reading like the Spider-Man clone saga from the 90s. And I didn't know any of the story in between. I didn't quite add up. And then, like I say, I started getting into the animated shows and going to BlockBuster and then getting the cards. And then once I realized that you could go to a comic book store and start purchasing stuff, well, that was a whole different story.
Life changed. all from there. That's so cool. Yeah, I really like that. And and then, so yeah, so you were a kid, you were picking up these books, and you were what, basing it off the cover, basing it on purely the fact it was Spider-Man. You just like, yeah, Spider-Man, I'll have it.
So again, like I said before, with those cards on the back of them, they would tell you
Yeah.
what issue the card was referencing. So
Okay.
I kind of already had a baseline, so I could be looking through the books, and yeah, I might pick up a couple of stories just based on the covers, but other times I was looking for specific numbers because I loved the card. Like there would be one or
Right.
two cards that I absolutely loved, and I'd carry them around with me all the time. One of my first cards and one of my favorites. Bear with me a sec. Is actually
Brilliant.
that one there.
Brilliant.
So that's Daredevil versus Namor.
Oh
And
yeah.
I had no idea what that was. I didn't know anything about it apart from this. Then, of course, we had the Incredible Hulk TV show where we saw like the live action Bruce Banner walking around. And so Daredevil would make an appearance in that show. So all of a sudden, I knew who Daredevil was.
Okay.
So I was like, well, who's he fighting? Like, what is that? And then fast forward.
Ooh. I'm loving the show and tell. This is brilliant.
Fast forward, and I've
Wow.
actually got the very comic.
Whoa, it's the same picture, yeah.
And it's exactly the same.
Wow.
So yeah, it's just it all spirals. That's just
great, man.
one thing after another.
That's brilliant. I mean, I'm a bit speechless. This is this whole, when you're saying it like that, you can see this timeline, and it's really cool. You can just plot things on this timeline, like, of Luke's comic book history,
Yeah,
and that's awesome.
And I am very nostalgic. That's why it's all just here. Like I can just grab it because I remember that timeline. I remember those feelings, and that's why I surround myself with this stuff. Because as sad or as geeky as it sounds, everything in this room tells a story.
It's a safe place here, man. That's cool. Yeah, that's awesome. So that room is kind of comforting for you then, to be in there, and just like, you're
Very
surrounded by all these things that you love and you like and you enjoy and you reminisce over, and yeah, that's awesome. Is it a big room? Is it like a bit of a box room, or?
No, it's reasonably sized room. I mean,
Yeah.
immediately underneath me, because I've actually got a 3-story house. So immediately underneath
Right.
me is the master bedroom, and that's approximately the same size. So
Wow.
it's
Okay.
it goes further forward
Yeah.
beyond what the laptop's sitting on.
That's mental. And it's literally just like covered in.
It is packed full of stuff, like overly so. I need to clear out some of it. It's too much.
Yeah, that's cool. No, awesome. I love that. Thanks a lot for telling me about that.